Welcome to the Field of 68 After Dark's YouTube channel. We are going to be live every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on YouTube and on Stadium for the entirety of the spring.
Over the last 36 hours, we have seen more developments come from Lexington. The latest coming on Tuesday morning, Brandon Garrison, after not taking a visit to Lexington, ends up in Lexington, the Oklahoma State transfer this past year, 6'11", 245 pounds. They also add in Andrew Carr, a Wake Forest transfer, who adds some size as well. This is in addition to Lamont Butler from San Diego State, to Amari Williams coming from Drexel, to Otego Away from Oklahoma. So, Rob Doster, I ask you this question. What are your thoughts on Garrison, on Carr, and how Mark Pope is building out this team? What do you think they can be?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's it's rather awkward when you have a guy like a Brandon Garrison committing without taking a visit and making that commitment while Great Osibor is on his official visit to Kentucky. I wonder how that dynamic is when you're the coaching staff that is trying to recruit a kid while also taking a commitment from another kid who may or may not play the same position as the kid that you have currently on the official visit. The dynamics of these microwave visits and these microwave recruitments that you see from the transfer portal has been fun and awkward, and it's something that I feel like would be in an episode of a Larry David show at some point. But I do think it is worth noting that Mark Pope is putting together a roster where it feels like he's kind of building it around adding a bunch of I think Otego Oweh and Lamont Butler are the ones that stand out the most to me. A bunch of grown men that are going to be elite defenders the second they step on campus, and starting with that, and then finding the scoring and finding the talent and finding the shooting and finding the other pieces that he could put around those players as well. Kobe Brea is currently on his visit there, and it kind of seems like by process of elimination, Kentucky, unless someone else comes in, Kentucky seems like the last place that he has left of the five that he had listed. So maybe you add him a little bit of shooting as well. I like this core here. It feels like they're a little bit big man heavy. They probably got to add a couple more guards. I would love to see a veteran point guard here at some point, Goodman, on the roster anywhere for Kentucky, but I like the start of what he has put together. Mark Pope has put together in Lexington.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid. It's solid. Like their three bigs are a little bit different than one another. They complement each other. I think you've just got a solid 7-man roster at this point, but you need to bring in a couple other dudes if you can. And otherwise, you're going to be a good team, not a great team next year. And I think that's probably what you're going to see under Mark Pope, though. You're not going to see the Calipari high-end talent. You're going to see a bunch of it might kind of resemble a little bit of like a Tubby Smith type roster from years ago. Not pros littered up and down the roster. You might have a couple, but again, you win with veterans right now. You win with experience. You win with balance and depth. And I think that's probably what Mark Pope's trying to assemble here to be, good, but they're not going to be great.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to note here, Fana, that when you are Mark Pope and you're put in a situation where you have to add 13 players to your roster, right? Where you have to literally build your roster from scratch in the span of like 2 or 3 weeks, that you can't really be all that picky. If you find a guy like an Otego Oweh who averaged 15 points a game in the Big 12, if you find a guy like a Lamont Butler who is an elite defender that can play at the highest level, that has a winning pedigree, that hit a game-winning, buzzer-beating jump shot in the Final Four to send his team to the national title game, you take that kid. If you get someone like an Andrew Carr who averaged 13 points and 7 rebounds in the ACC, you take that kid. If you can get a former McDonald's All-American like Brandon Garrison, you take that kid. And then you figure it all out, and you try to be able to put together enough to be competitive your first year. And then hopefully you got some guys that are going to be there for 2, maybe 3 years. Hopefully you got some freshmen that you can kind of develop and coach up. Hopefully it will allow you to get some momentum in the recruiting market out of high school guys. So I don't think that you look at this first year, especially in this era where you got to add 13 guys, look at this first year and say, Mark Pope better be competing for SEC championships and Final Fours, or we got to get him out of there after year one. No, man, like he's fighting for scraps right now. He's got to add 13 guys in like 4 weeks. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, but I think we would all agree, too, is that Kentucky fans, have become used to making the massive splashes in an offseason or knowing that they have a number one recruiting class under John Calipari. They would trade that any day of the week for a more cohesive, experienced roster that's built to win and makes progress and then is playing its best basketball in the time of year that matters most, March. So you're kind of seeing a balance here, right, Jeff? Of you said it. Like, yeah, it might be closer to Tubby Smith. But by the same token, not year one, but in the grand scheme of things, big picture, John Calipari was winning every type of recruiting battle that he needed to win. Kentucky fans would trade all that if it meant that they could get back to the Final Four. That's why we've ended up here in the first place.
Kentucky fans want it all. They do. They want it all. I mean, let's be honest. They want to be relevant in the regular season, and they want to win in the postseason. Obviously, I think if they had their pick, they'd probably take going to a Final Four over what they did in the regular season a year ago. I think you're going to get this roster, to me, and they'll add a couple more pieces, but to me, this team this year looks more like they're going to be a fringe top 25 team and get in the tournament as a 6, 8 seed, something like that. And maybe they win a couple games in the NCAA tournament. But I think they'll feel better. They were just so checked out on John Calipari. They were so checked out on him over the last couple of years that it's like anything, right? Like whoever your guy is, like Steve Lutz is a great example at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State fans had no idea who he was when they hired him, but he's their guy now. And with Mark Pope, it's a higher level because he's their guy and he's one of them. So they are going to back him. They're going to give him money. They're going to expect things. But again, I don't think they're out of whack in their expectations in year one. I think it's get us to the second round, second weekend of the NCAA tournament, and we will be ecstatic.
Yeah, and real quick, and then we can get into John Calipari at Arkansas, because I do just want to say, Kentucky fans, everything that I heard from people that I know personally, from people online, from people in the comment section, from people on Twitter, is that they were tired of being a place that prioritized getting 19-year-olds to the NBA and celebrating the successes of those Kentucky alums at the next level while sacrificing the culture and the program, the development, and getting to know these guys and having players there for 2, 3, 4 years and being able to make runs in March. Well, you know what? If you want to be able to have that culture and guys there for 2, 3, 4 years, you got to be able to give it time. Patience. This is not a one-year rebuild, right? You're developing a program, you're developing a culture, and you're got to be in it for the long haul and accept the idea that, hey, the starting point might just be being a 9 seed the first year. Second year, you're a 5 seed. Third year, a 3 seed. Year 4, you're making it to the Final Four, right? You got to be in it for the long haul if you're here with Mark Pope. That's all I want to say.
See, I don't think it's going to be that guy. I don't think you're going to have that type of progression anymore because, as I said with Villanova, like you may hit the portal right one year and then the next year you got to revamp. And you know what? You're going to swing and miss because a lot of schools right now are just saying like, all right, I got 3 guys on the board. I'm just going to take like Brandon Garrison might be a good example right now for Kentucky. Great Osibor was there. He's boys, I think with Amari Williams, they're fairly close. And they might be saying, Kentucky, you know what? If Brandon Garrison's ready, we're going to take a bird in the hand right now instead of
we saw that with the shooters. We saw that with the shooter, like the drop of the shooters, right? Like you had Rylan Griffin, Cade Tyson, and Kobe Brea, who were kind of like the same spot, the top 3 guys for that role in the portal, right? Kansas took Rylan Griffin. North Carolina took Cade Tyson. The Duke visit didn't happen for Kobe Brea. UConn only wanted one of Aiden Mahaney or Kobe Brea. They didn't want to have that stockpile of perimeter players. So now Kobe Brea kind of ends up at Kentucky, right? If that ends up, he's there right now, and it seems like a process of elimination. He'll probably going to end up there, right? Unless something else pops. So that's just kind of the way that it works with this portal stuff. And honestly, like I was telling someone this earlier, guys, that's the way that it works for recruiting freshmen as well, for the most part, right? It just, that happens over the course of like 4, 5, 6 months, as opposed to 4, 5, 6 days. See, everything is just kind of sped up when you get into the portal and the way that this is all working. Thanks for watching the Field of 68 After Dark. Make sure to hit that like button.